Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's office hours. Today, we're going to focus on an important and timely topic, Q intelligence, and more specifically, the introduction of Q performance index, or as we call it, QPI. Many of our customers are managing more queues, more data, more reporting, and more operational complexity than ever before. And while dashboards and reports are still important, the reality is that more data does not always make it easier to know where attention is needed most. And that's what today's session is all about. So I'm excited that we're joined today by Jason Forehand, CEO of ISI Analytics, who will walk us through this topic and introduce how ISI is thinking about the future of Q visibility and QPIs. Jason, thank you ever so much for joining us today and for taking the time to walk everyone through this. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you.
Hey, thanks, Adam. I really appreciate it. I mean, with that introduction, maybe I'll just turn the presentation over to you to give this morning. I don't think I'm necessary after that. Thanks, everybody, for joining today. I always love the opportunity to chat with our customers. And so we got a handful of slides prepared for you today that we'll talk through, and then we'll, do the usual and open up for any sort of question and answer as we go. But as Adam mentioned, for like 30 years, organizations have managed their operational improvement really the same way. When they wanted better decisions, we asked for more data. When we wanted more insights, we asked for more reports. And when we wanted more visibility, we asked for more dashboards. And I don't remember a point in time in any other point in history where we have more operational data available to us than now. And yet, we find that customers can't answer the very simple question of, what should I do next? And, hi, I'm Jason Forehand, as Adam mentioned, and I'm excited to be here today because we're going to answer that question. It's actually why we created Q Performance Index in the first place, and you'll hear me refer to it as QPI as we go along. And for decades, ISI has been helping organizations understand how people communicate. And these are companies that are both big and small. And we've analyzed billions, that's billions with a B, of interactions. But there's a trend we're seeing. And that trend is that access to data is exploding. And I look back at, even my own experience. Who has more dashboards today than 3 years ago? And if I ask myself that question, absolutely. More dashboards are everywhere. And dashboards were intended to be a shortcut. But yet we have all these more dashboards available to us. Yet none of us really have any more free time. And, teams are still struggling to answer, questions, fundamental questions. Is my queue healthy? Is customer experience degrading? Or what should I focus on first? And so maybe the problem isn't a lack of data. In fact, most organizations, I would say, are drowning in data, yet starving in direction. And so maybe the bottleneck is interpretation. And if interpretation is that bottleneck, the future isn't better reporting, it's better understanding. And that's why I'm here today to talk about how Q Analytics is evolving from reporting to operational intelligence. And let's just say we solve the reporting issue. We have every metric dialed in. We have every dashboard fully customized. And we have every report known to man scheduled. We have visibility into everything. Yet, most teams are going to start their day and it's going to look something like this. Open a dashboard. Look for something unusual. Maybe open another dashboard. Then a report. Next thing you know, we end up in Excel. And let's be honest, once Excel gets involved, you know we're going to be here for a while. And we're spending all of our time searching for the problem versus fixing the problem. And the root of it really comes down to when everything is visible, nothing is prioritized. And so we went from having too little data to be able to make decisions to too much data fighting for our attention. And that leads to alert fatigue, dashboard fatigue, and investigation fatigue. And that's why I believe dashboards are becoming necessary but insufficient. And this is where it starts getting really interesting. So we've got solutions like Teams and Webex who have lowered the barrier to creating queues. And that's a really positive outcome. The side effect, though, is operational complexity. And so every new queue creates new elements for us to monitor. And over time, that adds up. Next thing you know, we've got 5 or 15 or maybe even 50 queues that we have to manage. Queue operations are becoming harder to manage proactively. And that's because the complexity is growing faster than our ability to interpret it. And that's the real trend I worry about. And that is exactly why we need a better way to manage queues. The standard approach to queue management has really been straightforward. Pick a threshold, set alerts, wait for things to turn red. Now, the problem is thresholds assume every queue gets treated the same way all the time. And so if we take an example here, we've got 2 queues on the screen, and I'll pick out VIP and billing. Now, both of these have a 12% abandonment rate. Would anyone say those queues pose the same risk? Of course not. The VIP queue is in crisis, while the billing queue is kind of operating normally. It's the same metric, but it's a very different meeting. And that really comes down to the fact that healthy is contextual, not universal. And in fact, static thresholds don't measure customer impact. They measure if a number crossed a line. Those aren't the same thing. And so what should we do instead? That question is exactly what led us to create QPI. And I know what people are thinking. QPI, oh great, I've got another metric. And if QPI was just a metric, I wouldn't be standing up here today talking about it. We weren't interested in creating just another metric. What we were interested is understanding queue health as it relates to context. And so QPI is a dynamic queue health score that learns how each queue normally behaves and surfaces when customer experience is truly at risk. So think about that for a second. Not when a threshold is crossed, but when actual customer experience is impacted. And so QPI, the goal wasn't collect more information. The goal wasn't to just get more data for people. The goal was to reduce the operational noise that we all experience and help teams focus on what matters. The goal of QPI is to help queue managers answer the question, which queue deserves my attention first? That's the problem that QPI was designed to solve. If we go back to that previous example of 12% abandonment rate, QPI starts by asking, are they actually the same? And so the first thing people ask is, well, how does this actually work? And the answer is very carefully. I'm joking, of course. It starts with context. And if we think about it, a missed call or wait time in isolation doesn't tell you all that much. The metrics become meaningful when you understand them and understand them all within context. So QPI looks at behavioral patterns, historical trends, wait time changes, and then the operational drift over time. The individual inputs aren't really all that it's important, but what's important is what we're able to do with those inputs. Queue Performance Index learns what's normal for each queue independently, and that's really critical. A queue that handles VIPs is going to behave differently than the billing queue. And every queue in your organization has their own fingerprint. And once you understand that fingerprint, you can understand the behavior that matters. That is what Queue Performance Index delivers. And so imagine it's Monday morning. And instead of you opening 3 dashboards and 2 reports and Excel, instead, you open Q Analytics. You log in. Now, the first thing you read isn't a chart, but instead, it's a summary. And that summary reads something like this. A queue requires your attention. The VIP queue experienced abandonment rates 28% higher than normal, concentrated between 11 a.m. and 1 p.m. Our recommended action is to review staffing coverage during lunch hours. That's what QPI was designed for. Pointing queue managers to the right problem faster. Now, when most people hear about AI and analytics, they think about automation or chatbots or maybe a dashboard that put a little sparkle icon in the corner. And QPI isn't a AI parlor trick. It's a shift from reporting systems to decision systems. Historically, analytics answered questions like, how many calls were missed, or how long did customers wait? And those are useful questions to ask. But the next generation of analytics is going to answer a different set of questions. Those are going to look like, what should I pay attention to? What action should I consider taking? And this whole conversation wraps around Q performance index. And this is why it matters. QPI provides AI with a foundational context layer. And once you have that foundation, everything else becomes possible. And so let's just take a quick step back from the technology for a minute, because this isn't about AI or Q performance index. What it's about is how we manage operations. And if we think about traditional operations, this is the manual investigation and static reporting, the alert fatigue we discussed. Do these things sound familiar to you? I assume they do. And that's because I spent my whole career in that area. And then let's think about intelligent operations. Those are going to be, prioritized action and adaptive intelligence and earlier intervention. That's where we're headed. And the most successful teams of the future won't necessarily have more data. They'll have better guidance, better prioritization, and more time to focus on improving the customer experience. And organizations that are using solutions like Teams or Webex Customer Assist, you can scale your service operations without deploying traditional contact center solutions. It's really powerful, but also creates the challenge we've been discussing today. The easier it is to create queues transforms into the harder it becomes to manage them at scale. But that's where I think the next wave of innovation happens. That's how we're thinking about Q Performance Index. Not as another report, not as another dashboard, but an intelligence layer that sits on top of Q operations. And the operations that get the most value from those solutions like Teams and Webex won't be the ones that just create queues. They'll be the ones that understand their queues. And everything I've shown you today represents where we believe Q Analytics is going. It's the direction we're investing in. It's the direction we're building towards. And honestly, it's the direction that I think the industry needs to go. And if you're managing queues today, I genuinely want to hear your perspective. What frustrates you? What takes too much time? What decisions are hardest to make? Because the answer to those questions is where the future of Q intelligence begins. That's the journey we're on. And if that vision resonates with you, we'd love to continue the conversation. And so we're actively bringing in customers into the design and architecture of our Q Performance Index. And if that's interested to you, definitely reach out to one of us on the call today, and we'll get you involved in that program. So Those are the prepared slides we had today about QPI or Q Performance Index. If you can't tell, I'm incredibly excited about the direction of this, and I hope you've left excited as well.